What if everything you've been told about growing houseplants is wrong? Not slightly wrong. Completely, expensively, unnecessarily wrong. Right now, somewhere in your home, there's probably a bag of potting mix, a shelf of fertilizers, maybe some perlite, some drainage trays, some slow-release pellets. And every few days you're checking soil moisture, worrying about overwatering, dealing with fungus gnats crawling out your pots like tiny uninvited roommates. What if I told you that some of the most stunning, lush, thriving indoor plants on the planet don't need any of that? No soil, no drainage holes, no soggy roots, no mess on your floor when you repot. Plants that our great-grandparents grew on kitchen windowsills in old jam jars before garden centers even existed. Plants that science has now confirmed grow better, live longer, and cause far fewer problems without soil than with it. Most people have been gardening the hard way their entire lives, and nobody told them there was an easier path. Today, I'm going to show you 20 indoor plants that thrive completely without soil, rank from genuinely impressive to absolutely jaw-dropping. Stick around because number 15 on this list will completely change the way you think about what a houseplant even is. And number 20 is so unexpected, so stunning, and so easy that once you see it, you'll want to try it this weekend with things you already have at home. Make sure you subscribe because every week we bring you content that saves you money, cuts through complexity, and helps you grow beautiful plants without the chaos of traditional gardening. Let's get into it. Plant 1, Pothos. Number 1, Pothos, the plant that started a quiet revolution. Let's begin with the one that has been proving this point for decades. The plant that college students, busy professionals, and forgetful beginners have been growing in glasses of water on windowsills since long before anyone called it a trend. Epipremnumorium, commonly called pothos or devil's ivy, is a gold standard of soil-free growing. And the nickname tells you everything. Devil's ivy, because it refuses to die. You can ignore it, forget to change the water, move it to a dark corner, and this plant will still be quietly growing, trailing its heart-shaped leaves down toward the floor like it has nowhere else to be and no complaints about the situation. Here's what makes pothos truly special in water. It doesn't just tolerate water growing. It develops completely different roots for it. Specialized water roots that are structurally distinct from the roots it grows in soil. Thicker, smoother, built specifically to pull oxygen and dissolve nutrients directly from water. Hydroponic research has confirmed what plant lovers have known for generations. Pothos in water often grows more vigorously than pothos in soil. Take a cutting with at least one node, the little brown bump on the stem where roots emerge. Drop it in a clear glass of tap water. Within a week, white root threads appear. Within a month, you have an underwater forest growing in your kitchen. Change the water every 1 to 2 weeks. That's the entire care routine. No soil to check. No watering schedule to remember. No drainage tray overflowing onto your floor. Just a glass, a cutting, and patience. Think of pothos as the doorway plant, the one that shows you how simple this can be and quietly asks why you were ever doing it the hard way. Plant 2, Lucky Bamboo. Number 2, Lucky Bamboo, the ancient water dweller hiding in plain sight. Here's a plant that has been grown in water for centuries, not as an experiment, not as a trend, but as its completely natural way of life. Lucky Bamboo has been a fixture in Asian homes and businesses for generations, prized for its association with good fortune and prosperity, and has been sitting in water containers on desks and tabletops the entire time. Here's the twist. It's not bamboo at all. Dracaena sandriana just happens to produce those elegant segmented stalks that look convincingly bamboo-like. But unlike true bamboo, this plant evolved along riverbanks where its roots sit in water permanently. It's not adapting to water culture. It was born for it. The pebbles you see in Lucky Bamboo arrangements at garden centers aren't there for nutrition. They're architectural. They hold the stalks upright. The actual growing happens in the water, and it can continue for years in the same container. Maintain the water level to cover the roots and about an inch of the base. Change the water every 2 to 3 weeks to prevent algae. If your tap water is heavily chlorinated, switch to filtered or distilled water. Lucky Bamboo is sensitive to chemicals in a way most plants aren't. That's the care routine in its entirety. Think of it as a living sculpture that maintains itself. Elegant, architectural, and asking almost nothing in return. Plant 3, Spider Plant. Number 3, Spider Plant, the one that makes more of itself for free. Spider plants have a feature that makes them almost unfairly perfect for water growing. They produce babies, actual miniature versions of themselves, dangling on long arching stems like tiny green ornaments, each one arriving with a head start, with root nubs already partially formed, ready to drop into water and begin growing immediately. Chlorophytum comosum has been a beloved houseplant for well over a century, and its popularity has never really faded because it combines visual appeal, toughness, and almost generous quality. It just keeps giving you new plants. Place one of those plantlets, even one with just the tiniest visible root nubs, in a small glass of water. Within a week, those roots will be 3 times longer. The establishment happens so quickly that you can track visible progress every single day, which is one of the most satisfying things a plant can do for you. Studies on spider plant physiology show they're among the most adaptable houseplants in existence, thriving across a remarkably wide range of conditions. That same adaptability makes water culture completely natural for them. Change the water weekly. Provide bright, indirect light. Watch the plant grow until it eventually sends out its own arching stems with its own babies, and the whole beautiful cycle begins again. Some collectors grow entire spider plant families in water, row after row of glass containers, generations of the same plant, producing babies that produce babies, all for the cost of one original cutting and weekly water changes. Think of it as a plant that does the propagation work for you, handing you new plants continuously and asking very little in return. Plant 4, Philodendron. Number 4, Heartleaf Philodendron, the plant your great-grandmother knew. This is one of those plants with actual historical memory embedded in it. Heartleaf Philodendron has been growing in water, on kitchen windowsills across multiple generations, before fancy potting mixes, before fertilizer spikes, before anyone was selling you a complicated 6-step plant care system. People put philodendron cuttings in old glass jars, set them on the windowsill, and forgot about them. The plants thrived anyway. Philodendron heteration produces those glossy, heart-shaped leaves on trailing vines that can cascade beautifully down from a shelf or twine upward if you give them something to climb. The leaves range from deep forest green to bronze to variegated cream and green, and they maintain their quality completely in water culture. Take a cutting with a few leaves and at least one node. Place it in water. Within days, you'll see root nubs forming. Within 2 weeks, a developing root system. Within a month, new leaves unfurling above the waterline. Modern hydroponic research confirms that philodendrons don't just survive in water. They develop robust, permanent root systems that sustain the plant indefinitely. These aren't temporary roots waiting to graduate into soil. They are fully functional, long-term roots adapted to aquatic life. Use a clear glass container so you can monitor root health. Change the water weekly. Place in bright, indirect light. The vines grow continuously, leaf after glossy leaf. Think of it as a living connection to every grandmother and great-grandmother who trusted the simplest approach and was proven right. Plant 5, Peace Lily. Number 5, Peace Lily, the elegant plant that blooms in water. Peace lilies are one of the most devoted followings in the houseplant world, and for good reason. Those glossy dark green leaves, that graceful upright form, and most of all those white blooms, technically modified leaves called spathes, that appear like flags of quiet elegance above the foliage. What most peace lily owners don't know is that their beloved plant can live for years without a single grain of soil. Spathiphyllum species grow naturally on the floors of tropical rainforests where the soil stays permanently moist. That deep preference for consistent, reliable moisture is exactly what makes water culture such a natural home for them. They don't have to adjust to being wet. Wet is what they've always wanted. The transition requires patience. You cannot simply pull a soil-grown peace lily from its pot and drop it in water. The roots need time to transform. Rinse all soil gently from the roots. Place in water. Change it every few days in the early weeks as old root material adjusts. Within 3 to 4 weeks, new water-adapted roots emerge and the plant begins to visibly thrive. Once established, maintenance is simple. Weekly water changes. Roots submerged but crowned, the growing center kept above the waterline. Bright, indirect light. And eventually, those beloved white blooms will return, opening gracefully above the water's surface as if the transition never happened. Think of it as a sophisticated plant that proves water culture isn't just for tough basics. It can support genuine, flowering elegance. Plant 6, Coleus. Number 6, Coleus, the living painting that roots in days. Coleus leaves look like someone spent hours hand-painting each one. Combinations of deep crimson and acid green, burgundy edge with bright yellow, purple veins running through cream backgrounds. These are genuinely spectacular plants, visually among the most dramatic things you can grow indoors. And they root in water faster than almost anything on this list. Plectranthus scutellarioides, which most people still call by the old name Coleus, produces those vivid multicolored leaves on upright bushy stems. Take a cutting from any healthy stem, remove the lower leaves, and place the bare stem in water. Within 3 to 5 days, visible roots. Within 2 weeks, a root system substantial enough to support vigorous new growth. The plant doesn't pause. It accelerates. Here's what makes Coleus in water visually spectacular. The color intensity in the leaves actually improves when the plant receives adequate light in water culture. The pigments deepen. The contrast sharpen. You end up with a plant that looks more vibrant than the one you started with. Grow multiple varieties together in a clear container, mixing colors and patterns. Start small cuttings, and within 8 weeks you'll have a full, bushy, dramatic display that looks like it took years and cost considerably more than a few empty jars and tap water. Maintenance requires slightly more attention here. Change the water twice weekly because Coleus grows fast and clouds water quickly. Provide bright indirect light for maximum color intensity. Pinch growing tips regularly to encourage fullness rather than leggy single stems. Think of it as a painting that grows and refreshes itself, arriving at new colors and patterns every few weeks. Plant 7, English Ivy. Number 7, English Ivy, the old world trailer with centuries of water culture history. If you want to understand how long humans have been growing plants in water without soil, look at English Ivy. This plant has been trailing from glass bottles on cottage windowsills across Europe for hundreds of years. Before grow lights, before liquid fertilizer, before anyone was selling you hydroponic nutrients in a dropper bottle, people were growing ivy in water and finding it absolutely flourished. Heterohelix produces those classic lobe leaves on trailing stems that will climb if given support or cascade downward in long, graceful curtains of green. The plant grows wild across Europe and the United Kingdom, clinging to stone walls and tree trunks with aerial roots that are naturally predisposed to become water roots. Cuttings root faster in water than in soil. That's not opinion. That's what generations of observation have confirmed, and modern propagation science supports it. Take cuttings in spring or early summer with several leaves and at least 2 nodes. Place in water. By the end of the first week, root nubs appear. By the end of the second week, functioning roots. By the end of the first month, new leaf growth is visible and the cutting has officially become a plant. Traditional use involved clustering multiple cuttings in decorative glass bottles to create dense cascading displays. The more cuttings in one container, the more lush the final effect. Change water weekly. Provide bright indirect light, though ivy tolerates lower light better than most plants on this list, which makes it versatile for rooms that don't get strong sun. Think of it as the plant that has been proving this method works for centuries, long before anyone needed to be convinced. Plant 8, Arrowhead Plant. Number 8, Arrowhead Plant, the fast grower that outpaces itself in water. Arrowhead plants are one of those happy surprises where transfer into water doesn't just maintain growth, it accelerates it. These plants actually grow faster in water than they do in soil, and once you understand why, it makes perfect sense. Syngonium podophyllum produces those distinctive arrow-shaped leaves that shift form as the plant matures, starting upright and compact, then gradually trailing and vining outward. Leaves range from solid green to softly variegated with white, pink, or deep burgundy, depending on variety. Here's the key detail. Arrowhead plants naturally produce aerial roots along their stems, tiny root structures that emerge even on healthy, soil-grown plants. These aerial roots are already partially developed when you take a cutting. When you place that cutting in water, those structures don't need to create roots from scratch. They simply expand and activate. The process is dramatically faster as a result. Within 1 week of placing a cutting in water, visible root growth. Within 2 weeks, a substantial root system. Within a month, new leaves unfurling above the waterline with a speed that genuinely impresses. Modern hydroponic experience shows arrowhead plants actually prefer consistent moisture, which conventional pot growing struggles to maintain. The wet and dry cycle of watering and waiting doesn't suit them. Water culture gives them the even moisture they want, and they respond with vigorous, sustained growth. Weekly water changes. Bright, indirect light. Occasional pruning to maintain shape and encourage bushiness. The plant will trail if cascaded, climb if given support, and grow continuously without complaint. Think of it as the plant that shows you what was always meant to look like when given exactly the conditions it actually needs. Plant 9, Chinese Evergreen. Number 9, Chinese Evergreen, the colorful survivor. Chinese evergreens have been popular houseplants since the Victorian era, which tells you something significant. They survived changing tastes, passing trends, and a century and a half of competing with every new exotic species that arrives on the market. They endure because they are simply excellent plants. Aglaonema species produce leaves painted with patterns of silver, deep red, hot pink, cream, and green in combinations that look genuinely artistic. Some varieties have leaves so boldly patterned they look tropical and almost unreal. And despite that exotic appearance, these plants are among the most tolerant, forgiving, adaptable houseplants in existence. That same toughness translates perfectly to water culture. Chinese evergreens develop robust water root systems that can sustain even large, mature specimens indefinitely. You can transition an established plant from soil by gently washing all soil from the roots and placing in water, changing frequently in the early weeks. Or you can start fresh with stem cuttings, which root reliably in water within 2 to 3 weeks. Once established, those colorful leaves maintain their vibrancy completely. In some cases, with adequate light, the colors actually intensify. A pink-leaved aglaonema in water under good light can produce new leaves with deeper, richer color than you'd see from the same plant in a pot. Change water weekly. Watch for algae growth in the container, which signals the water needs refreshing more frequently. Provide indirect light consistently. Think of it as a living stained glass window that maintains itself, asking only for fresh water and a place near the light. Plant 10, Begonia. Number 10. Begonia, the exotic beauty that surprises everyone. Begonias seem too fancy for water culture, too elegant, too delicate. The kind of plant that surely requires precise soil pH, careful humidity management, and a complicated feeding schedule. And then you put a cutting in water, and within a week it has roots, and everything you assume turns out to be wrong. Cane begonias, sometimes called angel wing begonias, are the varieties that adapt most beautifully to water growing. They produce tall, upright stems with large leaves that are often spotted, painted, or flushed with metallic sheen on top and rich burgundy beneath. The flowers arrive in clusters, delicate and pendant, in shades of red, coral, pink, and white. And yes, they flower in water. Given adequate light and occasional diluted fertilizer, an established cane begonia in water will bloom just as it would in soil, possibly more reliably because a consistent moisture prevents the stress cycles that can interrupt flowering. Begonias grow as epiphytes in their natural habitat, living on tree branches where they absorb moisture from humid air rather than soil. That adaptation to moisture without waterlogged roots translates almost perfectly to water culture, where roots access both moisture and oxygen simultaneously. Take stem cuttings with several leaves. Remove lower leaves. Place in clean water. Change it twice weekly in the early stages. Within 1 week, roots begin. Within 3 weeks, a functional root system. The plant grows on, producing new leaves, extending stems, and eventually flowering. Think of it as the plant that proves sophistication and simplicity are not opposites. Before we get into the second half of this list, and trust me, the next 10 plants are where things get genuinely spectacular, do me a quick favor. Hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps this video reach people who are still spending money on bags of soil and wondering why their plants keep getting root rot. You're doing them a favor, and if you haven't subscribed yet, click that button. We post every week, and we cover exactly this kind of thing. Practical, real, money-saving plant knowledge that the gardening industry would rather you didn't have. Now, let's get back into it. Plant 11, Tradescantia Zebrina. Number 11, Tradescantia Zebrina, the plant that roots while you watch. Silver inch plant is one of the most immediately satisfying propagation experiences in all of water culture. We're not talking about waiting a week to see progress. We're talking about visible root growth within 48 hours. Under ideal conditions, some growers report seeing the beginning of roots within a single day. Tradescantia Zebrina produces trailing stems covered in leaves that are striped with silver on top and deep purple beneath, a color combination that looks intentional and dramatic, like someone designed it for maximum visual impact. The plant earns its common name because it can grow an inch per day under good conditions, and that speed extends to root development. Here's why it happens so fast. If you look closely at a Tradescantia stem, you'll see tiny nubs at each node, preformed root structures that exist on the plant before it ever touches water. When you take a cutting and submerge those nodes, you're not waiting for roots to generate from nothing. You're watching existing structures activate and expand. The root system emerges rather than grows, and the difference in speed is dramatic. Take cuttings with at least 3 leaves and remove the lowest ones. Place in water. Check back in 48 hours. You will see roots. Within a week, the system is substantial enough to support visible new growth above the waterline. Change water every 3 to 5 days because fast-growing plants cloud water quickly. Bright indirect light deepens the purple pigmentation significantly. Pinch regularly to encourage bushy growth, rather than single long trailing stems. Think of it as a plant that gives you proof immediately, visible progress you can see before you even have time to wonder if it's working. Plant 12, Monstera deliciosa. Number 12, Monstera, the statement plant that thrives without soil. Monstera deliciosa is the plant that launched 1,000 design magazine spreads. Those enormous, dramatically perforated leaves, the architectural presence, the suggestion, a tropical rainforest brought indoors. It's been on every interior design wish list for years, and it can live long-term in nothing but water. We're not talking about small rooted cuttings kept alive in a vase. We're talking about substantial growing plants with full-size leaves developing those characteristic splits and holes, growing and producing new growth month after month without a single gram of soil. Monstera deliciosa naturally produces thick aerial roots from its stems, roots designed to cling to tree trunks in the wild and draw moisture from the humid air. When you place a cutting that includes at least one of these aerial roots in a large container of water, those roots adapt to the aquatic environment, and new water roots develop from the stem nodes. The key detail with Monstera in water is nutrition. This is a large, energetically demanding plant, and plain tap water doesn't contain the nutrients it needs to sustain that growth. Add diluted liquid fertilizer to water every 2 weeks. Change the water weekly. Use a container large enough to accommodate the developing root system. Given adequate nutrients and bright indirect light, the plant will continue producing new leaves. And with patience and good conditions, those new leaves will develop the fenestrations, the holes and splits that make Monstera instantly recognizable. Think of it as a plant that proves water culture can support genuine showpieces, not just trailing vines and small greenery. Plant 13, Dracaena. Number 13. Dracaena, the architectural long-term water dweller. Dracaena represents a different category on this list. Not the fastest grower, not the most dramatic propagator, but something arguably more valuable in a houseplant: long-term reliable stability. These plants in water don't just survive for a season. They thrive for years, sometimes for many years, in nothing but clean water. Dracaena marginata produces those distinctive spiky leaves on woody, architectural stems that give the plant a sculptural quality. It looks designed, intentional, the kind of plant that anchors a room visually without competing with everything else in it. In their native environments, Dracaenas are adapted to inconsistent rainfall and periods of drought, which means they've evolved to be extraordinarily efficient with both water and nutrients. They take what they need slowly and steadily without demanding constant feeding or attention. In water culture, this translates to a plant that simply lives quietly, adding new growth at the crown, dropping older leaves gradually at the base, never creating problems. One important care note: Dracaena species are sensitive to fluoride in tap water, which can cause the leaf tips to brown over time. Use filtered or distilled water for these plants. It makes a real and visible difference. Change water every 2 weeks rather than weekly. Provide moderate light. That genuinely is a complete care routine. Think of it as a plant that proves water culture isn't just for fast-growing novelties, but can support genuine architectural plants living quietly and beautifully for years. Plant 14, Prayer Plant. Number 14, Prayer Plant, the living clock. Prayer plants bring something to water culture that no other plant on this list offers: movement. Daily, reliable, visible movement that makes the plant feel genuinely alive in a way that even the most beautiful static plant cannot match. Maranta leucanura produces leaves painted with red or white veins running across rich green backgrounds. The patterns are intricate, almost architectural. But what makes this plant extraordinary is its behavior. Every evening, those leaves fold upward along their central veins, resembling praying hands, then unfold again each morning to greet the light. The behavior is called nyctinasty, and it continues reliably whether the plant is growing in soil or in water. Prayer plants grow naturally on humid tropical forest floors where soil stays permanently moist. That love of consistent humidity makes water culture almost ideal for them. The evaporating water from the container creates a microclimate of moisture around the lower leaves, and the roots have exactly the even, never-drying moisture they prefer. Take cuttings with at least 2 leaves and several nodes. Place in water away from direct sun. Bright filtered light is ideal. Within 2 weeks, roots develop. Within a month, new growth with those painted leaf patterns begins emerging. The prayer plant is patient. It doesn't explode with growth. But what it offers instead, that daily movement, those intricate patterns, that sense of a plant with its own personality and its own relationship with light, is something no other plant on this list provides. Think of it as the plant with a daily ritual, one that interacts with you through movement rather than words. Plant 15, Dieffenbachia. Number 15, Dieffenbachia, the dramatic transformation plant. Here's where this list takes a genuinely unexpected turn. Dieffenbachia produces some of the boldest, most tropical-looking foliage of any houseplant. Large leaves painted with creamy white patterns, spots, and splashes against deep green backgrounds. The kind of plant that looks like it should require specialist care in a greenhouse. And you can grow it from what looks like a dead stick. As Dieffenbachia plants age, they naturally drop their lower leaves, leaving bare woody stem sections below the remaining leaf cluster at the top. Most people look at those bare stems and see nothing useful. What you should see is a propagation opportunity. Cut those bare stem sections into pieces 4 to 6 inches long, each one containing at least 1 or 2 nodes. Place them horizontally or vertically in water, ensuring at least 1 node is submerged. Within 2 weeks, roots emerge from the submerged nodes and new shoots begin pushing up from above the waterline. Within a month, you have a developing plant with new patterned leaves unfurling. You are turning what looked like plant waste into new specimens. A leafless stick becomes a thriving tropical plant in a matter of weeks. Modern experience with Dieffenbachia confirms that these plants actually prefer the consistent moisture of water culture over the wet-dry cycles of pot growing. They suffer less, develop fewer issues, and grow more steadily. Think of it as a plant that teaches you to see possibility in what looks like nothing, and then proves the point dramatically. Plant 16, Swiss cheese vine. Number 16, Swiss cheese vine, the compact version of the most popular plant in the world. If Monstera deliciosa is the statement plant of this generation, then Monstera adansonii is its more manageable, more water culture-friendly counterpart. The same iconic perforated leaf aesthetic, the same tropical appeal, but at a size and growth rate perfectly suited to growing in water containers in real homes. Monstera adansonii produces leaves 4 to 8 inches long covered with natural holes, technically called fenestrations, that give both plants their common name. The plant trails beautifully, extends quickly, and roots in water with impressive speed. Take cuttings with 2 or 3 leaves and at least one node. Place in water. Within a week, roots begin forming. Within 3 weeks, you have a substantial root system and new vine growth, extending noticeably, like its larger relative. Swiss cheese vine benefits from diluted liquid fertilizer added to the water every other week. The nutrients support leaf development and encourage the fenestrations to form on new growth. Research on Monstera species confirms they evolve as epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants in the wild, absorbing water and nutrients from sources other than soil. Water culture isn't foreign to these plants. It closely mimics their natural growing strategy. Weekly water changes with fertilizer every other change. Bright indirect light for best leaf development. Let it trail downward or give a small support to climb upward. Either way, it grows continuously, producing perforated leaf after perforated leaf. Think of it as getting the most coveted look in modern interior design in a format that fits on your bookshelf. Plant 17, mint. Number 17, mint, the water plant you can eat. We're shifting categories now, and it changes everything. Because mint in water isn't just a beautiful plant. It's a functional one, growing on your kitchen counter, producing fresh leaves continuously, available every time you need it for tea, cooking, cocktails, or simply to run your fingers through and enjoy that smell. Mentha species, whether spearmint, peppermint, chocolate mint, or apple mint, root with remarkable speed in water. Take cuttings from any healthy established mint plant, remove the lower leaves, and place in water near a bright window. Within days, roots begin forming. Within 2 weeks, enough new growth to start harvesting. Here's what makes water the ideal environment for mint. In soil, mint is notoriously aggressive, spreading through underground runners until it takes over entire garden beds and becomes a problem rather than a plant. In water, that vigor is perfectly contained. You get all the productive energy of mint with none of the invasiveness. The plant produces abundantly and stays exactly where you put it. Harvest regularly, and the plant responds by branching and producing even more growth. The more you take, within reason, the more it gives back. Change water twice weekly because fast-growing mint consumes nutrients quickly and can cloud water. Provide the brightest light available. Consider placing it directly on the kitchen windowsill, so it's immediately accessible when you're cooking. Studies on herb cultivation consistently show that many herbs produce higher essential oil concentrations in hydroponic conditions than in soil, which means more flavor, more fragrance, and more of whatever you want from the herb. Think of it as a farmer's market on your windowsill, producing fresh harvest continuously without a single trip to the grocery store. Plant 18, basil. Number 18, basil, the kitchen essential that grows better in water. If mint is the water herb for drinks, basil is the water herb for food. Fresh basil in water on your kitchen counter represents one of the most practical, immediately useful applications of everything this list is about. No more bunches of basil wilting in your refrigerator within 3 days. No more paying grocery store prices for a handful of leaves. Just a glass of water, a few cuttings, and a continuous supply of fresh basil exactly where you cook. Ocimum basilicum, whether sweet Italian basil, Thai basil, or purple basil, roots from stem cuttings placed in water. Take the top 4 to 6 inches of any healthy stem, remove lower leaves, and place in a glass of clean water near your brightest window. Within a week, root threads appear. Within 2 weeks, the plant is actively growing, and you can begin harvesting upper leaves. The harvesting technique matters here. Always harvest from the top, cutting just above a pair of leaves. The plant responds by sending out 2 new branches from the cut point. 2 branches become 4 become 8. The more carefully and regularly you harvest, the bushier and more productive the plant becomes. Modern research on basil cultivation has produced a particularly interesting finding. Basil grown in hydroponic conditions often develops higher concentrations of essential oils than soil-grown plants, assuming adequate light and nutrients. That means more flavor in the leaves, more fragrance in the kitchen, better results in your food. Change water every 3 to 4 days because basil leaves contain oils that transfer to water and can promote bacterial growth. Provide the brightest possible light. Add very diluted liquid fertilizer weekly to sustain vigorous production. Think of it as fresh ingredients on demand, growing quietly beside your stove, ready whenever you need them. Plant 19, hyacinth bulb. Number 19, hyacinth, the flowering spectacle in water. We save the flowering plants to the end of the list because they feel like a reward. Proof that everything we've talked about today extends even to plants that produce spectacular blooms. Hyacinths have been grown in water in special glass vases called hyacinth glasses for centuries. These narrow-waisted vessels hold the bulb above the waterline, while allowing the roots to grow down into the water below. The practice was popular in Victorian parlors precisely because it combined horticultural interest, watching the roots grow visibly below and the flower spike develop above, with spectacular fragrant blooms that filled a room. Place a hyacinth bulb in a hyacinth glass or any container that supports the bulb above the water while allowing roots to reach down into it. The base of the bulb should sit just at or slightly above the water surface, never submerged. Keep the container in a cool, dark place for the first 6 to 8 weeks to simulate winter dormancy. During this time, roots develop into the water below, long and white and vigorous, then move to bright light. What happens next happens fast. The flower spike emerges from the center of the bulb, surrounded by strap-like leaves, rising steadily over 1 to 2 weeks until it opens into dense clusters of intensely fragrant flowers. The scent is extraordinary. One hyacinth in flower can perfume an entire room. After flowering, the bulb can be planted outside where it may bloom again in future years. Think of it as nature's own slow reveal, building invisible progress for weeks before delivering one of the most spectacular and fragrant shows in all of indoor gardening. Plant 20, sweet potato vine. Number 20, sweet potato vine. The kitchen magic that started everything. And here we are at the one I saved for last. Because number 20 isn't just the most accessible plant on this list. It's a reminder of something important. That growing beautiful living things doesn't require a trip to a garden center or a bag of specialist soil or a liquid fertilizer formulated for tropical specimens. Sometimes it requires exactly what your grandparents already knew. Go to your kitchen pantry. Find a sweet potato, ideally an organic one, because conventional sweet potatoes are often treated with sprout inhibitors that will slow what's about to happen. Place that sweet potato in a jar or wide container of water. Pointy end down, about half the potato submerged. Set it near a bright window. That's it. You've started. Within a week, roots emerge from the submerged end, white and reaching. Within 2 weeks, green sprouts push up from the top, reaching toward the light. Within a month, those sprouts become trailing vines with heart-shaped leaves, cascading down from the jar. Within 2 months, those vines can be several feet long, filling the window with green. Here's why it works so immediately. A sweet potato is not a plant waiting to become something. It is already an energy storage system, packed full of everything a new plant needs to get started. Carbohydrates, nutrients, biological programming, all pointing toward one purpose: growing vines. Put in water and near light, and the process activates. No assistance needed. The leaves that emerge can be solid green, deep purple, or softly variegated depending on the variety of sweet potato you happen to have in your kitchen. Some produce foliage, so ornamental it rivals anything sold at garden centers. And the vines will keep growing for months, eventually exhausting the stored energy in the potato, but providing a spectacular trailing display the entire time. This was what our grandparents and great-grandparents did on winter windowsills when outdoor gardening was impossible. They brought growing, trailing, living green things indoors using nothing more than a vegetable and a jar of water. The method works exactly as well today. Better, even, because you can share it, document it, and inspire the people around you to try it. No special equipment, no expensive plant, no complicated care. A potato, water, light, and a little patience. The most basic ingredients producing the most unexpectedly beautiful results. Think of it as a reminder that the most impressive things are often grown from the simplest starting points. The reminder that you already have everything you need. 20 plants. No soil. No drainage holes. No fungus gnats. No bags of potting mix spilling on the floor. From the devil's ivy that has been quietly proving this point for decades, to the sweet potato vine that your grandmother already knew about, the evidence is clear. Soil is optional. Water is enough. And some of the most beautiful, thriving, impressive indoor plants on the planet are waiting to show you just how true that is. If this video gave you something new, smash that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps us reach every plant lover who's still doing this the complicated way. Drop a comment below and tell me which plant you're starting first. Are you team edible herbs on the kitchen counter? Team dramatic foliage? Team instant gratification with purple heart? I read every single comment. And subscribe if you haven't yet. Ring the notification bell. We post every week. And every week we give you exactly this: practical, empowering, money-saving plant knowledge that respects your intelligence and your time. I'll see you in the next one.